Welcome to this month's episode of the PA Path. I'm Emma Sellers, Chief Recruitment and Engagement Officer at PAEA. This episode is brought to you by the University of St. Francis and its online Doctor of Medical Science degree, now enrolling for full-time and part-time students. I'm delighted to have Tyler Smith as our guest. As Chief Policy Officer, Tyler is responsible for directing PAEA's federal and state advocacy efforts on behalf of PA programs, faculty, and students. In this capacity, he works on public policy issues impacting higher education and health workforce development via direct lobbying, grassroots mobilization, and coalition building efforts. Tyler, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm just absolutely looking forward to our conversation. Anytime that I hear from you, I'm much better for our time together. So just first, before we jump in, just want to say thanks for taking a few minutes out of your schedule.
Absolutely. Thanks, Emma. It's a great experience working with you at PAEA and really appreciate any opportunity we have to speak to students.
Absolutely. Before we start with the million questions and picking your brain, tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us about the work you do at PAEA. And I know a lot of our conversation is going to center around some funding and financing and things for PA school. So just tell us a little bit about how you work your magic.
Yeah, definitely. I'm currently the Chief Policy Officer for PAEA. I just celebrated my 8th anniversary with the association, which feels wild to me still at this point. In this role, I'm responsible for overseeing all the association's federal and state policy efforts. I have the opportunity to collaborate with a lot of folks at the organization, our board and leadership team, my team of 2, Catherine Majewski and Lizeth Renita, as well as other teams within the association. And really, a lot of the work that we do is making the voice of PA educators and students heard on Capitol Hill and with executive branch officials, really advocating on a wide array of issues, whether that's student loan access or clinical site incentives, really working on everything that we can to make sure that programs have access to the resources that they need, as well as students to prepare the future health workforce.
So just a little bit of stuff then, right? Not too much. Not too much. No, great. We appreciate all that you do for the PA profession, for students, faculty, the association. Definitely fully understand how much work goes into it. I'm going to dive right in. And something you mentioned, student loan forgiveness, financing, this big money piece. That's definitely a big part of making your decision to go to PA school. Can you tell us a little bit about some options that folks might have to finance PA school that people may know about, some they may not know about?
Yeah, definitely happy to. I think it's no surprise, especially to folks who are looking at the process for applying to PA school, that health professions education can be quite expensive. Most of our students that are coming in rely traditionally on federal student loans in order to finance their education. Roughly about 80% of students take out federal loans on an annual basis. And right now, I'm sure, as a lot of folks are aware, there are a lot of changes going on in that space with recent actions that Congress has taken. But for current students, they really have relied upon 2 major programs. There are federal unsubsidized Stafford loans, which are the lowest interest option that are available to students. Typically, students are able to borrow up to $20,500 per year through that program. And then for any needs beyond that, students have had access to Grad Plus loans, which haven't had a lifetime cap. They're a little bit higher interest than the unsubsidized Stafford option, but the real value of Grad Plus loans has been that they're able to support the entirety of a cost of attendance for students. That's typically a lot of the approach that most students take, really relying currently entirely on federal loans. For students who are interested in potentially lower interest rates, there are also private options available, but there are also some barriers that have existed to getting private loans. Typically, students will have to go through credit checks, typically have a cosigner, but you can get some more favorable terms sometimes in the private options. That's typically what the landscape looks like in terms of borrowing. I think, as a lot of folks know, there's also lots of scholarship options as well as loan repayment options. They're service-based as well. So that's really what the current landscape looks like.
No, thanks. I appreciate defining a little bit the different types of loans. I don't know that all of that is explained as thoroughly as it should be to all students across the board. And I appreciate that. When just digging into this a little bit, part of our audience and folks listening are going to be pre-PA students. Is there some differences that you might want to highlight between maybe the way that they have financed their undergrad education versus what it looks like to finance after graduation?
Yeah, the financing system for undergraduates has traditionally been a little bit more favorable than it's been for graduate students. For the past 15 years, only undergraduate students have had access to subsidized loans, which are those types of federal loans that don't have interest accruing while you're in school. So I would say that is really the main difference between undergraduate education and graduate education is really access to subsidized options. Similar to graduate students, though, undergraduates often borrow in the private market as well. So that's really kind of the main difference folks will face, in financing their graduate PA education compared to their undergraduate levels.
Perfect. Let me ask you one more thing. As pre-PA students are thinking through financing their education, their graduate education, are there federal programs that some pre-PA students or advisors might not know about or anything you can highlight for them?
Yeah, definitely. So for a long time, federal policymakers and also state policymakers have really recognized the importance of mitigating the debt that future healthcare professionals are taking on if we're going to get folks out into the areas where they're really needed in those rural and underserved areas. Fortunately, there have been lots of options available for service-based loan repayment. I think the one that most folks are probably familiar with, but not everybody, unfortunately, is the National Health Service Corps. That's something that PAEA's advocacy team has really prioritized, just given the bipartisan support for the program. So, for those who don't know, the National Health Service Corps provides both scholarships on the front end and then also loan repayment opportunities on the back end for folks who agree to practice in a health professional shortage area for usually a period of 2 years. That can be longer in some circumstances. But I think the National Service Corps is a great thing to keep in mind if you're a pre-PA student looking to mitigate some of the costs of your education. The other big program that I really like to highlight for folks is public service loan forgiveness. This is an option where the entirety of your student loan debt can be forgiven after making 10 years of payments if you work in a qualified nonprofit setting or for the government. So this is really a good option for folks who are looking at career opportunities in nonprofit healthcare settings like hospitals, community health centers, those types of things. And then one other thing that I always like to highlight, it's also available for folks who work at nonprofit institutions of higher education. So I know one thing that we talk about a lot at PAEA is what we can do to really build that faculty pipeline. And I think public service loan forgiveness is often an underappreciated resource that folks can take advantage of if they're interested in pursuing a career in academia while paying off some of the debt that they accrue during their school.
So I'm going to say this again to make sure our folks get it because these are amazing options. The National Health Service Corps and Public Service Loan Forgiveness. There are obviously some stipulations, some requirements, but if you work through that process, you have a good chance of being able to apply for some loan repayment or forgiveness even. Did I get that summary right?
Absolutely.
Wonderful. No, thanks for sharing that. And I think it's also important for folks to keep that in mind. Sometimes when we're applying for school, we look at that final number and it can feel overwhelming. But if you go into it knowing that there are some possible options, it can ease that a little. So keeping the end in mind first sometimes. Let's take a quick break for a word from this month's episode supporter, the University of St. Francis, and its online Doctor of Medical Science degree. Now is the time to take your healthcare career to the next level. Physician assistants are encouraged to enroll now in the University of St. Francis online Doctor of Medical Science program. In just 12 months, you can expand your knowledge and skills to open your career opportunities like never before. St. Francis offers a high-quality and personalized health sciences experience and even dual MBA and MHA degree options. If you're ready to level up your career, you belong at St. Francis. Visit sf.edu/apply to learn more. In your experience, what have been the most significant changes to PA school funding, education, financing over the past 3 to 5 years or so?
Yeah, so I think as folks who may have been paying close attention to the policy landscape may be aware, we've had quite the roller coaster ride over the past 5 years. I think while obviously COVID was one of the most significant public health challenges that we have faced in the country's history, I think one silver lining of the pandemic was it really shone a light at the federal level on the gaps in our healthcare workforce and really the need to make further investments to get more people into the pipeline. around 2020, 2021, we really saw Congress double down on making significant investments in health workforce development. In 2021, for example, there was an $800 million one-time increase above the normal funding level for the National Health Service Corps, really to bolster the impact of the program in underserved communities and fill some of the gaps in the workforce that we've seen illustrated through COVID. I will say we have seen a little bit of retrenchment since kind of like the health workforce highs of the COVID years. And under the Trump administration, we have seen proposals emerge that really seek to limit the amount of federal aid that is being dedicated to health professions education. I alluded to some of the changes that were made in the budget reconciliation bill, typically what people are referring as the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. We are anticipating significant changes coming down the line for PA education funding, as well as funding for health professions education more broadly. Just to dive into that a little bit, we are under the terms of the budget reconciliation bill. Current students are being grandfathered in through the completion of their program, but on July 1st, 2026, we are anticipating significant changes coming down the line. Just a couple of things I wanted to highlight. I spoke about the unsubsidized Stafford loan limits being $20,500 for students. Starting for students that are matriculating in July of next year, that cap is going to be raised to $50,000, which is good because students who are borrowing up to that amount will have access to lower interest loans. But the bad part of that, and what we are advocating to hopefully be able to mitigate down the line, is that Grad Plus loans are set to be phased out. So what that means is that PA programs that typically have 3 academic years, students will have access to $150,000 usually to finance their education. And then beyond that, they will have to look at private options to meet any remaining gaps. For folks who are attending lower cost programs, they'll be able to likely finance the entirety of their education through federal loans on an ongoing basis. But students at higher cost programs or students who may have to finance the entirety of their education will be more restricted in terms of the borrowing options. Like I said, lots of advocacy still going on to really mitigate some of the impact of these changes for students, but we are continuing to see the landscape evolve quite a bit.
That's good information to know. And again, something good for folks to keep in mind as they're thinking through this application process or taking the next step here. You mentioned advocacy a good bit. We have pre-PA students, PA students, faculty, staff, advisors, all sorts of folks tuning in. What can we do? What is some advocacy that our audience members can do to help increase the financing for PA school? How can we help? What's out there for us to do?
Yeah, so fortunately, PAEA's advocacy team is really committed to making opportunities for grassroots engagement as frequent and as easy as possible. So I would say the most immediate step that most folks can take is to really take a look at our Grassroots Action Network. We always have at least 3 to 4 campaigns running on that so that students and faculty have the opportunity to contact their members of Congress on issues that policymakers are considering. Just to highlight a few, funding for the National Health Service Corps on a mandatory basis is currently set to lapse on September 30th. So one of the campaigns that we're running is to have students and faculty really make their voices heard in terms of the impact of the program and the need to increase and extend funding for the NHSC. We're also running campaigns on the FY26 budget and appropriations process that helps to support the Title VII grants that support program development, student scholarships, and things like that. So lots of opportunities through the Grassroots Action Network. We also host a variety of in-person advocacy events, our spring advocacy trip every year, our student health policy fellowship where students do Hill visits, lots of opportunities for students and faculty to get engaged. And I think while Congress took a lot of action during the budget reconciliation process on student lending, these are issues that are still very top of mind for policymakers. Lots of work to still be done for sure.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So it sounds, again, just check out the Grassroots Action Network through our PAEA website. And there's a number of opportunities to really get out. And the main thing is to make your voices heard. And then I think what you just said, too, is very important to keep in mind that there's still work being done. It's top of mind for folks. People understand what impact this shift might have. Voices will make a difference, it sounds like.
Absolutely.
You've dropped a lot of good nuggets for our audience already, but as we come to the end of our time together, what are some pieces of advice that you would leave with any member of our audience or something for all members of our audience?
Yeah, I think just a couple of things. I know the federal student loan landscape can be very complex, and it seems like it's getting even more complex. Our government relations team is really committed and available to helping folks navigate all the changes that are coming up. If you ever have any questions, please feel free to contact me directly or anyone on our team. Our information is available on the PAEA website. And then I would just say, in terms of advocacy opportunities, while we have paid lobbyists on our team that are making the voice of PA educators heard on Capitol Hill, nobody can tell your story better than you can. It's really important, especially for folks who haven't previously been engaged in the advocacy process, to really take advantage of those opportunities, because constituent voices are really what moves members of Congress at the end of the day. And in tough policy environments like the ones that we're facing now, it really has to be an all hands on deck effort to really defend some of the programs that are really important to our workforce. I think that's what I would leave folks with.
Yeah, no, thanks. The power of telling your own story. That's definitely something that we all need to keep top of mind and understand the impact that it can have. Again, Tyler, always a better person when we share space together, share space and time. So thank you so much for being with us today. And again, members of the audience, please don't hesitate to reach out to Tyler and his team. A wealth of knowledge and information, advice for everyone. So again, Tyler, just thanks so much.
Thank you, Emma. It's a pleasure as always.
I appreciate Tyler for joining us, and thanks to everyone for listening to this episode of the PA Path. Before we go, I'd like to highlight the PAEA resource of the episode. PAEA has information about paying for PA school on the pre-PA page. Visit paeaonline.org/pre-PA. We thank the University of St. Francis and its online Doctor of Medical Science degree for supporting this podcast. Visit sf.edu/apply to learn more. Join us each month for conversations with leaders in our profession, both nationally and worldwide.